Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Amir Ali, and our topic of discussion is Introduction to European History. It is part of the course which I am teaching you, European History. European history basically, European history is dealing with the very important development of mankind from medieval to modern, early modern to recent times. But prior to all these talks, all these gossips, it is very important to discuss about all the lectures which earlier we have studied, an overview of the lectures. Talking about the Europe, basically Europe is consistent of various states like Holy Roman Empire. We also have France. We also have Spain and Netherlands. We have Italy. We have Prussia. We have Poland and Russia, and Ottoman Empire somehow that was also considered as part of you can say Europe. So talking about the Europe, the first is Greekish Empire or Greek Empire. Basically, the Greek Empire was centered around the Mediterranean Sea and was made of several city-states, and most famous were Athens and Sparta. These were the most developed states in economics, in politics, and as well as military. So these were the very important states of ancient Greco Empire. So these city states, those were also called as at that time independent nations. So here is the glimpse in between difference in between Sparta and Athens. That Sparta, that city was dirty and lacked beauty. Education was based on military skills. The citizenship was very strict. The kings were the judges. So the culture lacked art and was based on basically military theme. They were always militarymen. They were the warriors. And these were the main cities of ancient Greece. So, if we talk about the Athens, the city was clean and beautiful. The education was based on mostly mental skills. The citizenship was free. The courts were chosen by the lot of juries, and the culture were very included fine art and had a lot of theater. And that is the basic. We can say that is the basic impact of Greco culture, that Hellenistic culture was started in subcontinent when Skandar Azam or Alexander the Great he attacked this region, and when he returned back, some of his generals stayed over here, and when they stayed over here, a new culture emerged over here, and that culture was called as Hellenistic culture. So, a Roman Republic, Holy Roman Empire, that was basically a medieval institution uh, which had been founded on the breakup of the Roman Empire. And Otto I was the first ruler who crowned by the Pope John XII as the first emperor of Holy Roman Empire in 962. And it was constant, and it continued to exist up in 1806 when Napoleon Bonaparte first conquest brought about its end. And in the later half of the 18th century, its political boundaries included the whole of modern Germany, Belgium, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and parts of northern parts of Italy. So it was a confederation. The Roman Republic or the Roman Holy Roman Empire was a republic with more than 350 big and small states, which were ruled by archdukes, margraves, counts, bishops, who had nominal alliance to the emperor as the head of the empire. Talking about the ancient history or the early history of Roman Republic, it is very pertinent. It is very connotation to note that Roman Republic, all the laws of Roman Republic initially they were created by elected representative, and Roman armies were very powerful and they conquered many people and land, including United Kingdom and present day Spain. And Julius Caesar is considered as the main ruler or the founder, most genius ruler of Roman Republic. So here is a map of Roman Empire, that how much it was vast. Why there was the fall of Roman Empire? The question is that the band of Germans living along the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, and Rome called them barbarians. They attacked and conquered the Western Roman Empire. Vikings began sailing and sacking the northern and western coast of Europe, and they were influencing the culture of Europe into many parts. Eastern Roman Empire fell a thousand years after the Western Roman Empires during the Crusades. And if we talk about the Middle Ages, during the Middle Ages, many people lived under a feudal system. Basically, at that time in Europe, the feudalistic system was very dominant. They were very that was prevalent and across the Europe, and in that feudal system, everyone had place in society. Mostly, medieval society was divided into three classes: nobles, clergy, and serfs. And Duke William of Normandy brought feudalism to England when he conquered this country, when he entered in this country in 1066, and he became the king first of King William of England. Then we also have Crusade Wars. That Crusade Wars basically fought between the Muslims and the Christianity, and it was to take over the Jerusalem, that was Holy Land for the Muslims, as well as that was Holy Land for the Christians. And the Christian won the Holy Land for a time span, for a time being, but the Muslims got it back. And the Crusades War gave new ideas, new products, and new plans to trade in Europe. If we talk about France and role of France in Europe, so ever since the appearance of Joan of Arc in 1429 on the scene in the Hundred Year Wars with England, the French people were imbued with great patriotism. They were the French people. They were considered as the patriots, and they desired to have a strong national monarchy. But political conditions in France were very chaotic, and country was miserably torn by the family feuds and religious wars between the ruling families of Valiers, Bourbons, and Guise. And here emerged the growth of nation-state system. France and England went to war for 116 years. That was started from 1337 to 1453. So there were short battles followed by long periods of ceasefire. That 100-year war damaged the very crux of European society, but on the other hand, it also led towards the growth of nation state, and the French and the English monarchs now started to launch propaganda to create a sense of us versus them, the beginning of nationalism, the beginning of patriotism, the beginning of nation state system, beginning of the state first. So in this way, the growth of nation state system happened in England. So the Black Plague that came into Italy devastated mostly regions of Italy, and it got its name because it caused some parts of blood to turn black under the skin, and between 1/4 and 1/3 of European population just died of because of that Black Plague. And on the result, because of that plague, one of the results was shortage of labor because there were less workers, wages were increased for artisans and peasants. Here is the main Silk Road, a main trading route, the China's main route towards the Western world. Trader brought Chinese goods to the West, and Silk Route was not one way trade route. Basically, it was the modern concept of Belt and Road Initiative of China, which surrounds the whole of the world, which is touching the boundaries of Africa, which is touching the boundaries of Europe, which is touching the boundary of Middle East, as well as the Southeast Asia and South Asia. So that was the main route, and Chinese product from that route went to West. And then there comes Renaissance. Renaissance basically very distinct phase in the development of Europe. And Renaissance basically ushered an era of change in the attitude of the people towards conventional beliefs and dogmas. It also roused the conception of philosophy, religious ideas, science, art, and architecture, and it also led towards the new inventions and discoveries and released new and progressive forces. So it also marked the decay of the church and the empire and resulted in the development of nationalism and the weakening of the feudal system. In other words, we can say that Renaissance was the time which made the minds of the people to think rationally, to ask question and to put a question mark. Basically, the etymology of that word is Renaissance, driven from the French language and meaning as rebirth. And Renaissance Europeans were basically, as I was talking, that they were more interested. They were inclining towards the philosophy, religion, science, art, and architecture, and they were getting all the ideas from the ancient Greeks and Romans. The intellectual movement had its root in Italy and roused great yearning and enthusiasm for the study of the classics. The ancient glories of the Greece and Roman were resuscitated, and there sprang a desire in the hearts of many to emulate the deeds of great heroes of yore. The very important aspect of that Renaissance is humanism. Humanism was a very prominent feature of the movement. It extolled the dignity of man and his free will and stood for the recovery of human spirit from the bondage of clergy and political orthodoxy. It was basically the movement was giving respect to humankind, respect to mankind. The man is the supreme in the creation, in the world, in the atmosphere, in the surrounding. The man is basically the supreme. It was giving the respect to the man. So that Renaissance or humanism that based upon the emancipation of man and advocated liberty of thought and consciousness, it also excited men's curiosity and provoked, you can say that it provoked the spirit of inquiry. It led towards very revolutionary discoveries in the field of science and geography and roused a spirit of adventure among the sailors. It also gave a new concept of state, and Machiavelli, here we have also very dominant work of Machiavelli, the prince, which produced a very profound effect on the European state system, and expediency marked international relations. Here we see the start of international relations in the Europe. So the Renaissance basically was very deeply influenced by three events. First event was the sacking of Constantinople in 1453 by the Ottoman Turks, which led towards the large-scale migration of the Christian scholars to various parts of Europe. And wherever those scholars went, wherever those Christian scholars went, they carried their books and knowledge with them. Their content and influence further strengthened the Renaissance and was responsible for the establishment of number of colleges and universities in the Europe. The second important factor which highly influenced the Renaissance was the invention of printing press by John Gutenberg belongs to men's. He made possible the widespread publication of the books. So these had hitherto been handwritten and therefore were limited in numbers and expensive. The new invention made it possible to print and publish books in large number and brought them within the reach of the common man. So the knowledge was very widespread. The third major factor in spreading the Renaissance to other European countries was the French, German, and Spanish invasion of Italy from 1494 to 1530. So Italy had been as the cradle of the Renaissance so far, but now it spread to other parts of Europe. So the Renaissance in Germany encouraged a tremendous amount of intellectual activity and also created a great religious movement known as the Reformation, to which we shall refer as a new era of reforms in the church, a new era to stand against the clergy and against the church or the orthodoxy of the church. So another very notable feature of the transition from medieval to modern ages of the Europe was the spirit of adventure leading towards the discovery of new sea routes and new lands. In the Middle Ages, the Mediterranean Sea was the center of maritime and the commercial activities, but with the rise of Islam and conquest of Middle East and northern coast of Africa by the Arabs and Turks, now the Christian sailors and traders began to search for alternative sea routes to the east. So the Renaissance gave further impetus to this activity, to the exploration, to find out new ways. So the new scientific and geographical knowledge was utilized by the sailors in their voyages of discovery. Spain and Portugal became politically stronger than other countries of Europe, and they encouraged ambitious sailors to discover and acquire new land for their masters. So in 1492, we have the example of Christopher Columbus, a sailor who was financed by Queen Isabel of Spain, discovered the new world while attempting to find a sea route to India. On the other hand, in 1498, we also have example of Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese sailor who rounded up the Cape of Good Hope and landed at Calicut. He explored the new sea route to India. So the sea route to India was after all discovered. And other sailors also explored new sea routes and discovered many new lands and new seas. So these remarkable sea voyages and discoveries enriched the countries which financed them, because the new lands were appropriated by country under whose the banner of discovery was made. So naturally, the Spain and Portugal got the lion's share. They excited the jealousy and envy of other newly emerging nation state of Western Europe. Particularly, we talk about England, Holland, and France, and series of international wars in the 17th and 18th century was just followed because of that new explorations of sea routes. And to control those sea routes, we have we have examples, we have historical things, we have a history of long wars in between these states for the hegemony in the sea routes. So then another important event was the Reformation. The Protestant Reformation, why it is called Reformation, what was Reformation? Basically, the Reformation was another distinct feature of the modern age. As I was talking earlier, that Renaissance in Germany promoted a good deal of religious thinking, and people began to assail the vices of Roman Church. They started to raise question against the power and authority of the church. So in 1570, Martin Luther, who was basically also professor of theology at the University of Wittenberg and also among the clergy, he was for the very first time raised the standard of slogan revolt against the abuse and corruption in the Roman Church. His revolt soon gained momentum, and many German princes saw in it an opportunity to weaken the Holy Roman Empire and influence of the Pope, and to aggrandize their own political power. Those princes were thinking that their power is being controlled by the church, by the pope. So they found a shelter in Protestant Reformation to reduce the powers of the Pope. So they also joined Martin Luther King. Since the Emperor Charles V was busy with the Turkish invasion, and since he and the Pope were not on good terms, the movement was allowed to grow. So it demanded reform to the Roman Church and protested against the vices of the clergy and the church. So the Reformation uh, was very dominant movement, especially in Germany, and there was a bitter struggle in between the supporters of Pope and Reformation. Finally, by the Treaty of Augsburg, which was signed in 1555, peace was made between the Lutherans and the Roman Catholics, and the principle of cuius regio, ejus religio means whose the religion, his the religion was accepted. So now the princes were free to determine the religion of their states. So in this way, that Reformation highly influenced those states, those were standing against the Roman Church, those were standing against the chauvinism of Roman Church. So, although the Treaty of Augsburg was signed, that was not a religious end of all the war, that was not end of all the religious wars. So, another Reformation movement that was known as Calvinism was started by John Calvin, and a Frenchman by birth. And like Lutheranism, Calvinism was also spread far and wide, and very powerful section of the German princes also supported this movement. In order to suppress these Protestant movements, the Pope launched a Counter Reformation movement. What was the Counter Reformation movement? Persecutions and war between the forces of Reformation and Counter Reformation. So, the prosecution and wars between the forces of Reformation and Counter Reformation uh, disrupted the political, social, and economical life of Europe. And finally, a religious truce was signed after the 30-year wars and by the Treaty of Peace of Westphalia. So that was the end of some sort of religious truce was signed in between Lutheranism and Calvinism and the Catholics. So Lutheranism and Calvinism were accepted on a par with Catholicism. So, as a result of that Reformation movement, Europe was now divided into Catholic and Protestant bloc, and the progress of Reformation had a twofold effect. While on the one hand, it broke the spiritual unity of Christianity and the Christian people and heralded the rise of national church, on the other hand, it also undermined the political unity of Western Europe and gave rise to establishment of national state. So, this naturally resulted in the gradual dissolution of Holy Roman Empire in the succeeding century, and it also affected the very common sense, very ground of the European society and structure.